Hi, Shelbyville Central Elementary staff. This is Nikki Sargent and Kayla Gaddy from Colston, and today we're going to share with you a federally mandated presentation on Title III. Title III is revolves specifically around our second language learners, our ELs, and so we have some information to share. We're going to share our screen with you so you can see the video, and we'll just talk you through some main points. So Kayla's going to go ahead and start us.
So the first kind of like go-to court case was Lau versus Nichols, when EL was really established as far as what services are and have to be. So we have to provide supplemental language instruction to our language learners, no matter if they're level 1 all the way to 4. So it helps them unlock the English language, and it's not optional, and it has to provide language acquisition and not just kind of like remediation. So as far as the changes in ESSA, when our language learners take iLearn, the first year they're counted for participation, the second year it's participation and growth, and the third it's participation, growth, and achievement. Okay. How are ELs identified? So the only sole factor, the only way we can identify ELLs is by their home language survey. They ask 3 questions. If any of those questions are answered with a language other than English, that lets your AP or me know that we have to give them the screener. And the screener will tell us if they qualify or not for language services. And if they do, that at that point, that is where the ILP is written. So we can't go off things like they have an accent or their last name. It's solely the home language survey that determines if they are eligible for the screener.
So there's a couple of different things to think about when we're talking about students who are learning a new language. The first is it's kind of divided into 2 separate chunks of learning. The first is called BICS, and that's your basic communication skills. These are our students who are typically level 1s and 2s and are really still focusing on learning how to have conversations and just everyday language that they need to be able to communicate with others. It usually takes a minimum of 2 years up to 3 years for those social communication skills to really get into a place where students are comfortable and doing it automatically. As students progress then, they become more proficient speakers. We consider them probably more of a level 3, level 4. And their focus then is still a little bit of the social language, but really focuses on what is called CALP, the Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. And this is where students are really focusing more on academic language and holes in their academic knowledge. When I think about this, I think about things that are really confusing. Idioms are really confusing for students who may seem very fluent speaking to you conversationally, but still struggle academically. And that is because they still have those holes with that academic language, that trickier language, higher level language that we use in English, that they may not have been exposed to. And so we look at, okay, what are words that maybe are used in multiple contexts, but differently in multiple classrooms. And so that is usually someplace where they struggle. And these are just the different things we really start focusing on, the more academic language to fill the holes that they might have. One thing that is really important to understand about our ELs, especially most specifically to our level 1 learners and a little bit of our level 2s, is they go through what's called a silent period. And I don't know if you've ever been in a country where you don't speak the language, but you know how it feels for people to be speaking around you, speaking a different language, and you're just sitting there quietly because you don't know how to communicate back with them. Maybe you understand what they're saying even, but you can't. You can take it in, but you're having a struggle getting it out. My mask keeps slipping, I'm really sorry. But this is called the silent period, and it's typical for every new language learner, where they are just soaking things in, and they may not be saying anything at all, if very minimally. It does not mean that they're not learning. It does not mean that they're not listening or engaged in what you're saying. It just means that they are in a processing mode where it is really difficult to produce the language, and the confidence may not be there, or even the processing time for them to be able to take in what you're saying and translate it in their heads and present back in English from their native language. So the silent period, the thing to really remember is that students are still learning. They're not absorbing, but that it's totally natural, and we don't want to push them through this and make them speak. That can be really traumatic for them and may not be something that they really just can't do at that time. So the silent period is something we want to respect and understand, and remind ourselves of when we have students who are level 1 language learners.
I would say too that this would be a good time for them to communicate with visuals, whether that's visual communication, cards and gestures. That should be completely appropriate during that time.
Exactly.
Okay, so what is WIDA? WIDA is made up of 39 US states and territories. They're dedicated to research, and they give us the can-do descriptors that tell us what students can do at their proficiency level, and they help us gauge their English proficiency progress.
And it's a consortium. WIDA is, when she says 39 states, WIDA is a consortium, a group that have come together to really support ELs and to create tools that we can use to measure their success.
So one segment of WIDA is the kindergarten WAPT. When I talked earlier about screeners, the kindergarten WAPT is specific to kindergartners. So if I see a home language survey, it indicates a language other than English, I give them the kindergarten WAPT. At the first semester, they will only take listening and speaking. And then if they come in the second semester, they'll take listening, speaking, reading, and writing. That will tell us if this student is an EL learner or not, and it will give us a base level of their language ability until they take the actual WIDA Access annual test in the winter. So the WIDA screener is similar to the WAPT, but this is designed for grades 1 through 12. It assesses the same thing, it's just specific for grades 1 through 12. And then WIDA Access. WIDA Access is what they take every year, their annual test that measures their growth. And we get a score in listening, speaking, reading, writing, comprehension, and oral language. And then you get your overall score. When we refer to EL's level, we generally refer to their overall scale score. But each domain, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, will give you a lot more information about what that EL learner can do. Okay, and then the levels, level 1, level 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. In order in the state of Indiana to exit and be into the monitoring period, you have to reach a level 5. Okay, so until they score a level 5 or higher on WIDA Access, they are still considered language learners. So just some best practices to keep in mind when working with your ELs. Just anything you can do to build background knowledge or activate prior knowledge. Graphic organizers are really helpful for them to break things down into steps and organize their ideas. Another thing that's really important, oftentimes we think since there's a language gap that we should maybe lower our expectations, but we should actually still maintain higher expectations with scaffolds as appropriate, whether that's visuals or word banks, sentence starters, giving them the language to produce it. So maintaining those high expectations with the appropriate scaffolds. Visuals, making sure in class you're engaging listening, speaking, reading, and writing, so they're progressing in all 4 domains. The gradual release model, the I do, we do, you do together, then you do on your own. And really utilizing those WIDA can-do descriptors. Those will be really helpful for you to know to set reasonable expectations for your ELs, and also when you're planning for assessment. And then anytime that, this year's different, but anytime we can focus on group work together in those smaller environments where they're more comfortable, ELs really thrive.
It's something that I've noticed just having been an EL teacher, and then utilizing the skills I've learned from that in my general education classroom, is these are best practice for every student. So the tools you put into place for your ELs are going to benefit every student no matter their levels, because it just helps break down the thinking and the processing and the concepts, and really just makes the content accessible to everyone. So when you start using these tools for your ELs, you're really going to benefit everybody in your classroom.
Just some big ideas from research. Vocabulary is obviously very essential for language learners, as that's probably the basis of their gap. Heavy use of visuals as much as you can. And then really relying on those cognates for English and Spanish speakers, because those really help them make the connection. So our younger ELs can be expected to make comparable gains to native English speakers. It's when they get older that that gap really forms. So we have to be extra intentional. And keep in mind that reading, when you're working with ELs, just because they can read it doesn't necessarily mean they can comprehend it. They have to understand and know the vocabulary words in order for comprehension to set in. So that's just another opportunity to provide visuals to really help them understand and comprehend. The can-do descriptors I already touched on. I really would encourage you to look at those.
They're on the DOE, right?
They're on the DOE.
Mhm.
You can print them. They're just very helpful for setting reasonable expectations and planning for instruction and assessment. Okay, language objectives. This might not be something you're familiar with, but they are useful if you would like to look into them. You set your standard objective, and your language objective basically tells your language learner how they're going to meet that. So it's like turning the light on for them. They know they have to shoot the ball, but they need to be able to see to do that. So this gives them the language to understand how they will show you what they know. And then I just wanted to share some parent communication tools if you're not aware of some of these. Reminder talking points both translates both ways, and I believe Dojo does as well. For talking points though, I like it because parents do not need the internet to use that one. Obviously Google Translate is a good tool, but I would say if you're using it for Japanese, I would be very careful and only translate small, short words or phrases, because it does not do as well as it does with Spanish. And then Papagayo is a website where you can input a URL and it will translate everything for you. And then also there's a Google Chrome extension you can add, and you can actually just click a switch and it will translate the page into any language. And that works for Google Forms and Sheets and Docs as well. But I will say with translation, make sure that it's an actual need, because we want them to acquire language. So if we're translating everything, it might hold them back. But absolutely, if it's a newcomer student and it's necessary, I would use those tools to help them, especially for parent communication purposes.
All right, so that's the gist of EL, the laws which it came from initially, and then the different tools, different things to know about our EL learners. And again, I'm going to emphasize, just through being an EL teacher and working with Kayla and different experiences, that anything you do for your ELs is good instruction for all students. And so you're just going to benefit your classroom across the board for anything that you're doing for your EL kids to use with everybody. So we are going to hop out of this presentation. I'm going to put my glasses back on so I can see. There you go. And that is it. So that is our Title III presentation for 2021. And thanks so much for watching.
Thank you.